Welcome to an off-day edition of Mostly Mets, and what I'm going to be doing today is giving my thoughts on the Arizona Diamondbacks series that the Mets just recently won over the last few days. Also, I'm going to be previewing the Cubs series coming up starting tomorrow night at Citi Field. If you're new here, please subscribe, give me a like, comment, whatever you'd like. If you are a returning viewer, thank you for coming back, and give me a like, comment, all that good stuff. Anyway, we'll jump right into it here. The Mets took 2 out of 3 from the Diamondbacks over the last couple days here. It was a good series overall. You know, the first game, you had Canning going 5 innings, only giving up 1 run, and I really have to say I love what I've seen out of Canning so far this year. It's hard not to. He's got a 2.5 ERA. Nobody expected anything from Canning. If you're sitting here telling me you expected Canning on May 7th to have a 2.5 ERA, I would tell you you're lying, and that you're just lying to yourself. Right, there's nobody who thought that after he was a guy who had an ERA in the 5s last year. He struggled for pretty much his whole career to get batters out. He just hasn't been good. And the Mets have, with their pitching lab, have turned him into a usable starter. Now, he doesn't look like a Cy Young candidate. He's not giving you length in games. He struggles third time through the order. But listen, as a middle to back end of the rotation guy, if he gives you 5 innings, 1 run, believe me, I'll take that any day of the week. He's been very good so far. I think he's had 1 bad start where he gave up a home run or 2, and that was in Sacramento against the A's. He wasn't very good in that start, but every other start's been pretty good. So no issues with Canning. You know, there was a story that came out not too long ago basically saying that there was a ton of suitors for Canning this offseason, and that there was probably 5 or 6 teams that really thought they could tweak him and fix him, and they saw something that they could fix and that they could turn him into a good pitcher, and he kind of chose the Mets. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about anything like that. It was about who he thought could help him best in his development, because the Angels are known for having the worst pitching development in baseball, and he needed help. He needed help to learn how to pitch better and how to be a successful major league starter, and that's what the Mets look like they're turning him into. He gave up the 1 run in 5 innings. You got 2 innings from Brazaban in that game. And then Nunez came in and put 3 men immediately on base with walks, and he just wasn't ready. Listen, Nunez was not ready to come up. He was brought up out of necessity. He was doing the same thing in Syracuse. He needed a little more time. I don't think he's trash now. I don't think he's going to be, this is the Nunez that we have. I think he's just not ready. He wasn't ready to come up, and I think right now he's going to be used in mop-up duty until he shows that he's able to throw strikes. And that's probably the plan. You know, that's what they need to do going forward with him. I just don't see him being a major contributor right now. He needs to work his way into that. But overall, they got the win. They got the win in that game. They did just enough offensively. Alonso hit a home run, and Lindor hit a home run. That was their whole offense for the day, and they got the win, 5-4. Then in Game 2, what happened was what happens way too often with the Mets, and that's that they went completely silent. The bats just went dead. I think they only had 3 or 4 hits in that game. They just weren't able to get anything going off of Gallen. Now, I will give it, Gallen is a great pitcher. He always beats the Mets. The Mets always struggle against Zach Gallen, so you could say you just ran into a buzzsaw and ran into a guy that you never beat, and that's fair to say. But the Mets have a lot of these games, and a lot of teams do. I'm not saying it's only a Mets thing, but they have these games where if, the top 3 guys in their lineup aren't getting hits, then the bottom starts to struggle, and it kind of just spirals on them, and it just becomes a snowball at that point. And listen, everyone's going to have these kind of games, but it seems to happen almost once a series now for the Mets, and it's frustrating to watch those games. But yeah, they lose that game 5-1. Not a great start by David Peterson in that game. He did go 6 innings, which is longer than he does most of the time, but he gave up 5 hits, 4 walks, and 4 runs. His ERA is now 3.5, which, listen, it's not bad. You look at Peterson, he's not having a bad year, but he's having more of a back-end rotation back-end starter in the rotation kind of year rather than the front-end rotation guy. So if he was on a different team, he might look a lot better because the Mets starting pitchers especially, have been so good. You look, Senga has an ERA in the 1s. He's got a 1.16 ERA. McGill, up until his last start, had an ERA like under 1. So the Mets starting pitching has been so good, so Peterson looks bad by comparison. But he hasn't been bad. He just hasn't been good. He hasn't been as good as he was last year. Those those contact, those hard hit balls are starting to wear on him a little bit, and I just think this is more of what he is than what he was last year. He's a mid-threes ERA pitcher, which, listen, that's fine. If he's that, and as your fourth or fifth starter, I have no problem with Peterson being a 3.5 ERA pitcher. That's perfectly fine. And then we move on to Game 3, and the first innings of this game seemed a lot like the day before. The Mets weren't scoring. It seemed like another lifeless kind of day. Everyone was grounding out early in counts and not working counts on the pitcher, and then all of a sudden something switched. Lindor had a couple of doubles. Soto hit the 2 home runs, finally really seeming to break out. I've been saying for a couple weeks now that Soto looks like he's ready to break out, and he hasn't been doing badly. I think he was hitting 250, 260, and still walking. He's had an on-base percentage of 380, but he hasn't looked like Soto. But yesterday when he hit that bomb to center field, it kind of looked like maybe he was coming out of it. You see him smiling a little bit more, maybe being a little friendly. You saw him hanging out in the dugout, in the bullpen with the relief pitchers during a pitching change. So it just seems like it took him a little while to get comfortable. He's starting to get comfortable and fitting in, and I think he's about to go on a tear. I've been saying that for 2 weeks, though, 3 weeks maybe now even, so what do I know? But it really does seem like he's there. He's comfortable, and he's ready to break out. So really important there. And really everyone was getting hits in that third game. McNeil had a triple. Acuna had a hit. Everyone except for Beatty was getting hits. Even Ozakar came in the game and got on base. So I loved the way that they hit in Game 3, especially late in the game, obviously. And that's what I feel like their offense can be going forward, that consistent offense. I don't need them to come up and hit home runs every time up, but you need to see some consistency. You need to see everybody in the lineup getting a base hit, doing their job, moving the runner over, sacrifice fly, a base hit with runners in scoring position, novel concept for the Mets, but they had a couple of them. So nice to see, and hopefully that carries over into the Cubs series. Also, pitching-wise in that Game 3, Senga did not look great to start that game. He definitely did not have command of anything. He walked 5 in I think the first 3 innings, and then he really settled in, and he went 6 innings, gave up no runs, looked really good. Honestly, Senga, after those first 3 innings, he started to look like himself again. Sometimes that happens with Senga. He struggles early in games, especially the first inning. This one just happened to carry over for a couple more innings after that. But then he settled in and looked really good against a really good lineup. Even though he walked 5 batters, he only gave up a couple of hits. And against a lineup like the Diamondbacks have, it's hard to do. When you're putting guys on base, a lot of times those innings can spiral on you and you can start to give up crooked numbers, and he just didn't, and he was able to keep them at bay. So I'm impressed by Senga, even though if you look at the stats, it's not his best outing of the year. He settled in and was able to get the job done. All right, now getting into the Cubs series a little bit. The Cubs come in at 22-16. They're first place in the NL Central. They just came off losing 2 out of 3 to the Giants, and they're 5-5 in their last 10. So they haven't been raging hot or anything. They did win their 2 series prior to the Giants, but they're coming in kind of where you can beat them, right? They're not raging hot right now. They went through that a week or 2 ago where they looked unbeatable for a little while, and they were coming back in every game. The thing about the Cubs is that they're very relentless offensively. If you go through their offensive numbers, they're 3rd in OPS, 781. They're 5th in batting average at 258, and they have 55 home runs, which is 3rd in baseball. So they're a very good offensive team, and they're led by 3 really good hitters right now, and that's Kyle Tucker, who's one of the best hitters in baseball, probably a very underrated player. Not too many people talk about him, but he's really one of the top guys in the league for many reasons. First off, he's hitting 284, 395 on base, 942 OPS. He's got 9 home runs and 31 RBIs this year. Also, he has 10 stolen bases, so he's not just a one-dimensional player. He's not just a guy who hits home runs. He runs the bases well. He plays good defense. Overall, he's just a really good player. And he's going into free agency next year, and he's going to be looking for a lot of money. I don't think it's going to be a Soto-type contract, but he's going to get a lot of money, not from the Mets. He's not coming to the Mets, so don't start that. He's probably going to be a Yankee or a Dodger or something like that. But really good player that you're going to have to contend with in the series. Another guy is Seiya Suzuki. He's hitting 250, 830 OPS, 9 home runs, also 31 RBIs. So really successful season so far for Suzuki, who's kind of been an up and down player with the Cubs. We've seen him for a few years now. He's a good player, but he's kind of turning into a different level this year. He's pretty much solely DHing at this point. And then the third guy is the guy that used to be a Met. This has been talked about a lot lately since he's gotten off to such a good start, and that's Pete Crow Armstrong. He is the guy that the Mets traded to the Cubs for Javi Baez for that rental, which ended up being, listen, it's a bad trade if you look at it now, but at the time, Pete Crow Armstrong was not a top prospect for the Mets. He was a good prospect, but he wasn't a top prospect for the Mets. People thought of him more of as a defensive first center fielder. Think a Harrison Bader type, something like that, but with more speed. He was not thought of as a great prospect. So yes, if you look back on it now, you say that was a terrible trade for half a season of Javi Baez, to give up Pete Crow Armstrong. But nobody knew what Pete Crow Armstrong was going to become. So far this series, 265, 840 OPS, 9 home runs, 27 RBIs, and 12 stolen bases. So he's a dynamic player. He pushes the envelope. We saw him last year with the Cubs. I remember him hitting a triple against the Mets. He's a really good player, and he looks like he's going to be for a long time. We'll see what happens, but the people who were saying it was the dumbest trade ever, listen, at the time we all wanted them to make a trade. We all wanted another bat, and if that's what you had to give up, now you can look, and apparently what the Cubs were asking for originally at that time was Matt Allen, who is now back to pitching for the Mets, but before this year hadn't pitched in 3 years. So yes, you would have rather given up Matt Allen than Pete Crow Armstrong. Pete Crow Armstrong would look great on this Mets team right now in center field, but at the time it made sense. Yes, now it looks bad, but at the time anyone would have made that deal. It's just kind of, it's dumb to sit here and play like revisionist history. Like, we all wanted it to happen. We were all happy with it at the time. So overall, we got to let that go a little bit. Their offense is very, very dynamic. You're talking about a team that has a lot of power, third in the majors in home runs, like I said. There's 6 players in that lineup that have 6 home runs or more. So they're very good. They're deep. They're a deep lineup. They have a lot of guys who can beat you. It's not just those top 3 guys that I mentioned. There's other guys as well. There's even some high average kind of guys who don't hit home runs. There's just a good balance of pieces in that lineup that can beat you a lot of different ways. They can hit them out of the park. They can steal bases. They can push the envelope, hit doubles, triples. They can beat you in a lot of ways. And I'm interested in seeing how these Mets pitchers kind of go up against this offense. There's a lot of talk that the Mets can only beat bad teams, and in some ways it's kind of proven out, right? That they haven't played well against great teams. You swept the Phillies, and that was great, but the Phillies were playing bad at the time. You just beat the Cardinals. Yes, the Cardinals are a very good lineup, but other than Zach Gallen in their lineup and Corbin Burns we didn't face their best necessarily in terms of their pitching staff. I don't think that it's true that the Mets can't beat good teams, but so far they just really haven't. So the people who keep bringing that up aren't wrong by saying they haven't beaten any real good teams yet, but they are wrong in maybe saying that they can't beat good teams. So this series against the Cubs with our starting pitching, I'm curious to see how they do against a really good lineup like the Cubs. All right, now getting into the Cubs pitching, it's a little bit of a different story. The Cubs have a 3.95 ERA, which is good for 15th in the major leagues. So they're a middle-of-the-road kind of rotation, almost a 4 ERA. But they do have some pretty good pitchers in that rotation. We're going to see 2 of them, I believe, in this series. We're going to miss Imanaga. I believe he's injured, actually. He's 3-2 with a 2.82 ERA, and he's got 44 innings pitched, 34 strikeouts, 14 walks, but he's given up 7 home runs. And then Matthew Boyd, he's 3-2, 2.75 ERA, 37 strikeouts and 13 walks in 39 innings. And then Jameson Taillon, who I'm 90% sure the Mets are facing in this series, he's 2-1, 3.86, and he has 31 strikeouts and 8 walks in 39 2/3 innings. And he's also given up 6 home runs. So they're a pitching staff that they don't give up a ton of hits, they don't give up a ton of walks, but they give up a lot of home runs. I think they've given up the 3rd most home runs in the majors, I believe, 3rd most home runs in the majors. But if you look at their walks and their hits, they're up towards the top. They're up towards being one of the better performers, or at least mid-level. They're not in the bottom in any of those categories. they're not a real high strikeout team. They're not a power pitching, team. They're not really big on strikeouts, but they just kind of get the job done. They're ground ball pitchers. They know how to work counts and get people out and that kind of thing. So at the end of the day, it's a pitching staff that this Mets offense should hit, and I think they're going to have to, because the Cubs are going to hit. And yes, we can look at our pitchers and see how they've done so far, but I think this Cubs team is the type of team that can hit against anyone, and we have to do the same. I think it's going to be slugfest. It's going to be high-scoring games. Now, usually when I say that, or when people predict that, it ends up being the complete opposite. But I think these are going to be high-scoring games, and I think it's a good time for the Mets offense to really click and really be consistent and be what we think they should be. With Soto getting hot, that's very important. Pete's kind of cooled off a little bit. This is not that he's cooled off completely. He's still getting his hits, and he's still getting on base. He hit a home run the other night. But overall, he just doesn't seem as dominant necessarily in this last series as he was before. I mean, he did get his hits, and he got on base, and he got his RBIs. But you can start to see that he's maybe swinging at those pitches that he wasn't before, and maybe that's a product of them going after Soto more and maybe realizing that Pete's the danger right now, and they're trying to get Soto out rather than having to face Pete. So Soto's seeing better pitches, and then behind Pete in the lineup right now, there's not very much going on, whether it's Nimmo or Vientos or what have you. It's just, it hasn't been, he has no protection, right? He's great protection for Soto, but he has no protection right now with Vientos not hitting and Nimmo not hitting and, Alvarez not doing very much. He doesn't have anyone there for him, so he's starting to cool down. And I was worried that once Soto started heating up, Pete will start cooling down. Lindor's been pretty consistent, but now it's maybe Soto's turn to lead the team and carry the team to some wins offensively, like Pete did for basically this entire season. All right, now I want to talk about something that I did have an issue with in this last series and what I'm having an issue with in general lately. Since McNeil has come back, he's gotten the bulk of the playing time, and Acuna has seen the bench a lot more than he should. At this point, Acuna has proven that he's an everyday player. I was not an Acuna guy. I own up to it. I'm telling you right now, I was wrong. I am now fully an Acuna guy. And he adds something to this lineup that the Mets don't have, and that's speed and athleticism. He changes the game when he is on base. So putting McNeil out there every day at second base and putting Acuna on the bench is not only hurting Acuna's development, but it's also hurting the team. The team needs Acuna more than they need McNeil. They don't need a guy who, and I don't buy into this whole thing. I know a lot of Met fans are saying McNeil's the problem with this team, that they've been not playing as well since he came back. I don't buy into that. I don't think that McNeil's a problem in the clubhouse. I do think that he doesn't mesh well with those guys. I think that there is a personality conflict there. But overall, they're all professionals, and they're going to continue to play no matter if they like the guy or not, or if they feel comfortable with the guy or not. They're going to be fine. That's not the issue in my mind. What the issue in my mind is, McNeil just isn't the same guy anymore. I love McNeil. I think he's a baseball player. I love having him on the team because of his versatility. He could play a bunch of positions. He's a smart player. But he's just not at the level of Acuna at this point. And if it's between McNeil and Acuna playing every day, I'm sorry, but McNeil has to be on the bench. I don't care that he makes $15 million. I don't care that, he's signed long-term or for a couple more years at least. He needs to sit on the bench. Or he can go play left field and you can DH Nimmo. Or he can, play center field to give Tyrone Taylor a day off if you need to. But he should not be playing second base anymore. That should be Acuna 5 or 6 times a week. Every single day, Acuna should be in there. Because not only does he give you great defense, and that double play combination with Acuna and Lindor to Alonso, I mean, come on, it's night and day the difference between Acuna and McNeil at second base. That's just defensively. And then offensively, yeah, he probably doesn't have the same type of power or gap power that McNeil does, but he gets on base, he steals bases, he puts pressure on the opposing pitcher, which nobody on the Mets does. They don't have that player. Maybe Tyrone Taylor, he doesn't get on base very much. Maybe, Lindor, but that's not really his game. He's more of the gap power hitter, the home run hitter. You don't want him. If he's stealing a lot of bases, it means he's not hitting for a lot of power. So I think Acuna has to play every day. And at this point, I would love to see. Listen, I'm not a fan anymore. I don't think he's ever going to be a good player. But I think Beatty should be playing third base. I think we should have Beatty at third, Acuna at second, and I think we should have Vientos DHing. Vientos just doesn't look like a third baseman anymore. Beatty, you could say whatever you want about him. He can play third base. And he might not hit that much, and he might be a 220 hitter, but he's going to play a great third base, and he's better than your other options right now. I mean, are you planning on DHing Marte every day? I don't like that idea. I'd rather have Beatty in the lineup for all of his faults than having Marte in the lineup. That's just me, personally. I know they want to give these veterans more time, and you're going to still see Marte out there, and you're still going to see, McNeil out there, but at some point that has to end. The player who's playing better has to play. Not that Beatty's been great, but he's better at third base than Vientos, and I'd rather see Vientos DH than Marte. That's just my take on it. And then now you have McNeil also on the bench, sometimes playing left field. Then you can have Nimmo be your left-handed DH option on the days that when you need a left-handed DH sometimes. I like that lineup. It's a lot deeper than what we currently have constructed. I don't know what we're going to do about who hits fourth, and we've got no production out of the cleanup spot. I don't know what you really do because you're just not getting any production. Also, I love Alvarez. I think he still has the ability to be a very good hitter and very good catcher in this league, but Torrens needs more playing time too. When Alvarez first came back, it was, Torrens isn't going to be a backup catcher. It's going to be more of a 70-30 or 60-40 split. It hasn't really played out that way. And Torrens comes up with big hits, and he's a great defensive catcher. I think he's thrown out, I forget what the actual number was. I have to look it up. But he's thrown out more runners than anyone in the majors this year. And he hasn't even been a starter for a week and a half, 2 weeks. So Torrens needs to play more. If that means Alvarez goes to the bench, or a couple more times a week, or maybe DHs a day here and there, that's fine. Torrens needs to be in the lineup at least a couple times a week. 2-3 times a week, Torrens should be in the lineup because his bat's been really good. And he's been a clutch bat for the Mets. So our lineup could be deeper. We just don't necessarily use it the right way. Overall, this isn't a complaining video. It's just one thing that's been bothering me lately. McNeil, less playing time for McNeil, more for Acuna, and let's get Torrens in there a little bit more as well. Even if it's just a mid-game change, whatever, we just need to get some more at-bats for Torrens because he's been very good, and we need to see him behind the plate, especially against this Cubs team. I think Torrens should probably play the majority, maybe 2 out of 3 of these games because the Cubs do run, and Torrens can throw runners out. So I'd like to see Torrens in at a couple of these Cubs games. And with that being said, really happy with the way they're playing right now. Still 10 games over 500, 24-14, 2-game lead in the NL East. So you can't be upset. But the Phillies are playing better now. The Braves are starting to play better. They're a couple games below 500. So I don't think it's going to last that you can kind of flounder, play 5-5 every 10 games, and still expect to be in first place for very long. They're going to have to start doing better than that. And I think it starts against the Cubs. Prove that you're a good team. Beat a really good team. One of the best teams in baseball and in the National League. So hopefully that's what happens. Take 2 out of 3 here. And until next time, let's go Mets.